My name is Paul Steinbrueck, and I'm excited to be able to kick things off with you this morning. Thank you guys for coming out. You're brave souls. 8:45 is early for me anyway. So I think in order to get us all warmed up here, I'm trying to think how we get the juices flowing this morning. I got two options for you, okay? Option one is we all stand up and do jumping jacks. Option two is we play a little game, okay? So who's up for jumping jacks? No. Who's up for a little game this morning? Okay, all right, me too. That was the plan all along. All right, well, as you guys know, the number of communication channels, the number of platforms, social media networks, all that stuff has just exploded in the last decade or so. And so one of the biggest challenges that we have as communicators is figuring out which of these pieces fit into our communications puzzle and how they all fit together. So what I figured we'd start with a little game here. Let's see how many of these communications mediums you can name by their icon, okay? I'll start off with a real tough one, okay? All right, anybody name this? YouTube. All right, you guys are the gifted class, I can see. All right, next one. What's this? Facebook. All right, another easy one there. All right, how about this? Twitter. Good. We're on a roll. And this? Email. Yeah, good. All right, next one. Internet Explorer. I picked this one to represent websites. Next one. LinkedIn. Good. All right. How about this? Flickr. Good. Some photo people out there. How about this one? Instagram, good. Anybody recognize this? No, not sure what that is. Yeah, U.S. Postal Service. Mail, another communication medium that we have available to us. How about this? WordPress, good. Microsoft Word, yeah, another communications medium is just print, handing stuff out to people. And how about this? Pinterest. All right, good. Now we get into some, okay. Google Plus. How about that one? Foursquare. All right, good. How about this? We're going to get more obscure here. Anybody have any idea what this is? It is Ning. Very good. Ning is allows you to create your own personal, private social network. All right, another tough one here. What's this? It's a telephone, yes. We still communicate by phone, some of us. And the trickiest of all, face-to-face, yes. Sometimes we actually talk to each other face-to-face as well. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges, as I started off saying, is that there's so many pieces now of this puzzle, and just trying to figure out what we do with all of them. Which ones do we use in our communications? Which ones we don't use in our communications? I mean, we live in a great time with so many opportunities to connect with people and communicate with people. But what I see very often is that instead of seeing it as an opportunity, a lot of people feel overwhelmed by the options that are out there. They're not sure what to do, feels like they're behind, and there's so much that they can, so much to catch up on. And so my goal in this session here today is to help you think strategically about the communications that you have available to you, to figure out which ones are the right piece for your organization and how they fit together. And I want you to walk out of here with clarity rather than chaos, and with excitement about this era that we live in rather than dread about the next thing that's going to come along. So I hope that all of us, when we end today, you come out feeling like communication superheroes, okay? Sound good? All right, good. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Paul Steinbrueck, and I come from Safety Harbor, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area. I'm married, and I have 3 kids. This is my family right here. We host an Oktoberfest at our house every year, and this is our picture from last Oktoberfest. And so when I'm not festing, I am working at my company, which is ourchurch.com, which I started with my brother back in 1996. And our mission is to help Christian organizations, churches, schools, ministries, and businesses to help them achieve their mission online. And we do that by providing web design services, hosting, search marketing, and consulting. And another piece of that also is that because we're just so passionate about seeing Christian organizations succeed that we believe in not just providing the tools and the services, but really helping people and organizations understand how to use them well, how to choose the right tools. And so I spend a good amount of time blogging and doing social media. Our blog is called Christian Web Trends, and so it's all about just helping people succeed and doing that online. So one of the things that I really strongly believe is very important when it comes to communications is to understand your audience and who you're talking with. So I'd like to get to know just a little bit more about you guys before we jump into the presentation here. So first I'd like to start by just getting an idea of what kind of organizations you're a part of. So first of all, do we have any Biola students here this morning? Any Biola students? Okay. One in the back. All right. All right. How many of you work in communications or leadership in a church of some kind? All right, good. A lot of church people. And you can raise your hand for more than one of these things. How about if you're involved in the leadership or communications at a school? School folks, good. How about a business of some type? Lead or communicate in business, good. And in a nonprofit, secular nonprofit or ministry, anybody lead in that area? Good. I mean, there's a good cross-section here. Anybody who's a consultant, designs websites, or does communication as a consultant? Okay, a few of you guys too. Awesome. All right, well, good. The next thing I want to ask you is just what role do you guys have in your organization? How many of you are the head honcho? How many of you are the CEO or the principal or the director? We got some directors in there. Okay, good. How many of you are communications director in your organization? Yeah, okay, a few of you. How many of you are on the communications team but not the director? Anybody in that role? Okay, some of you. Good. And I guess that's it. All right. Other? Anybody for other that I missed? There probably is, right? All right, cool. All right, well, the last question that I want to ask to get to know you guys a little bit here is, educators and sociologists, they tell us that there's 3 primary types of learning styles. So there's auditory learners, there's visual learners, and then there's kinesthetic or tactile learners. So how many of you are auditory learners? We got any auditory learners out there? All right, well, you guys are in luck. You get to hear me talk for the next hour. How many of you are visual learners? All right, lots of visual learners. I am too. Hopefully I'll be able to keep things interesting for you guys as well and engaged. Any of you guys kinesthetic learners, tactile? All right, so my solution for you is I brought along some tennis balls here, okay? So if you have a question, and we'll probably, there's Q&A at the end, but who are my kinesthetic learners here? All right, in the back, if you have a question, raise your hand. I'll throw you a tennis ball, and then it's like it's your mic right there, okay? And then you feel engaged as well, okay? All right, you ready? Cool. Whoop. I guess I need to work on my catching skills here. All right. Well, Well, let's jump in and talk about communication strategy. I believe the reason why so many people are confused and overwhelmed by all the communications options are out there is because very few people have an overarching communication strategy for their organization. And we at ourchurch.com, we recently did an online survey just to find out who has communication strategies, who doesn't, and what are the barriers to them. And what we found out is only 25% of organizations have a communication strategy. And what I find is that when I talk with people about communications and technology, most people want to go right in and they want to talk tactics. Like they want to ask, how do I get more Facebook fans, and how do I get more visitors to my website? Should I be on Foursquare or Google+? They even ask things like, how do I make my website a powerful hub of communications, connection, and growth? But that's another tactical question. So before we get to the technical questions and we talk about how to use your website well, I really think that that we need to focus on the overall strategy. And so that's where I'm going to start with my talk today. So what is a communication strategy? All right, well, this is my definition, and it's kind of long here. I probably should have trimmed it down to a soundbite type thing, but I think a communication strategy is a document that defines an organization's communication goals, target audiences, and methods for reaching those goals. It serves as a guide for all day-to-day media, public relations, and communications activities in which the organization is engaged. And I highlighted two words in this that I think are particularly important and significant in it. The first, as you can see up there, is that it's a document. A lot of times when I talk to people, I say, do you have a communication strategy? And if it's a one-person communication department, often is, yeah, I got a strategy. Where is it? And it's like, right here, I got it. And I've got a friend of mine who's very fond of saying, if it's not in writing, it doesn't exist. And I believe this is true. And so having a written communication strategy is extremely important.
Is your friend a lawyer?
He's not, but that is a good point. Lawyers say that especially, don't they? The second word in there that I want to highlight is that it serves as a guide. And I think, again, one of the reasons why people are confused by the tactical aspects of communication is because they don't have this overarching strategy that really helps them to make the decisions that they need to make on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. And so at the risk of mixing metaphors, I've got my grand central metaphor, but I'm going to add to it here. Can you guys see that? Maybe not. So I'll read it to you. But leading your organization's communications without a written communication strategy is like sailing a ship without a map. And you really can't make those tactical navigation things when you're sailing if you don't know where you are and where you're going. And so that's why I think it's essential to start with a communication strategy. So that's where I'm going to start here. What I want to share with you is, creating a communication strategy, it's not easy. It takes a lot of work in the sense that you really have to think and focus and concentrate. But one of the ways that I want to try to make that a little bit easier for you is providing a simple outline or guideline to create a communication strategy if you don't have one or if you want to improve yours. And so what I've got here is communication strategy in 6 words, and these 6 words will help kind of guide you through the process. So the first thing that we need to address when creating our communication strategy is why. And I'm a firm believer that it all starts with why. It starts with your mission, it starts with your purpose, and your communications why, your communications goals should really be derived from your organization's mission statement. I mean, your communication should be aligned with your overall goals. And so if when you're developing your communication strategy, pull out that mission statement, that vision statement, and say, okay, now from a communication standpoint, what are we here for? What are we trying to accomplish that's going to help accomplish our organization's goals? Second question to ask, and this really has two parts, is who. First of all, start with who are you? Who are we as an organization? What is our brand? What is our style? What is our culture? You need to know who you are so that you can communicate that to the world. And the second piece of that is who is your target audience? Who are the people that you're trying to reach? What are their demographics? What are their psychographics? What are they thinking about? What are they concerned about? What platforms are they using for communications? Because you want to meet them where they are. So you really need to know who the people are that you're trying to communicate with. Second question, or third question, I'm sorry, is what? Once you know who you're trying to communicate with, what do they need from a communication standpoint? So say you're involved in a church, the people that are there, do they need to know when upcoming events are? Do they need to know, do new people need to know how to come visit your church, where it is? What information do they need, and when do they need it? Fourth question is how. And this really gets into the tactical part of your communication strategy. This is what everybody loves to talk about, but this is where you get to figure out, okay, well, what platforms should we be using? And what media kinds of things are we going to use? And then what are our strategies for each platform? What type of content are we going to create? How often are we going to create it? What's the makeup of our communications team? Who's going to do what? Do we need policies for how we use different communication tools? Do we need style guides? Things like that. So all of this goes into the how. And obviously, we could spend probably a whole day just talking about the hows, but I just want you to see where that fits into the overall picture of the communication strategy. Next one, ¿cuántos? Do we have any Spanish speakers out there? Yes, what does ¿cuántos mean? How many? See, I couldn't use an English word, so I had to use Spanish so I could keep to my one-word theme here. But ¿cuántos? How many? And this is really important. Once you know what your goals are, who you're trying to reach, how you're going to do it, you've got to measure what you're doing. And so you need to take metrics and I would say think big picture when you take your metrics. It's important to measure things like, how many Facebook friends do we have, or Facebook likes do we have? How many Twitter followers do we have? But even more than that, you want to know, for example, how many people have visited our church because they saw us on Facebook? How many people bought our product because of that last email that we sent out? How many people donated to our nonprofit because of that tweet that we sent out? So it's really essential that you track numbers so that you can evaluate what your communication strategy is, and you make sure that you're doing the things that work. And that leads us to the last one on there, which is where. And this is, every communication strategy should have a review process built into it. So how often are you going to look at those numbers, and then what are you going to do about it? Are you going to review them on a monthly basis and see how you're doing, and then tweak your strategy or your tactics as a result of that? Are you going to do a quarterly or biannually or annual strategic planning meeting? So it's really important because just this, things are always changing, and you want to always keep trying different things, and so you want part of your process that you have built in there to be evaluating that and tweaking that. All right, so before we jump into website stuff specifically, there's a couple of parts of this that I really want to focus on. And the next one I want to talk about is just the who thing. Now, a lot of organizations, when they think about their who's, who they're trying to reach, at the very simplest level, they break them down into two groups. You've got your outside people who are not connected with your audience or with your organization, and then that's what people do marketing to. We're going to communicate to them with marketing. And then you've got the insiders, the people who are already connected with your organization. And a lot of organizations just have it broken down into these two very simple groups. You've got your outsiders that we market to, our insiders who we communicate to. That's at a very simple level. Now, What I advocate is taking another step further. A lot of organizations do demographics, and they think about who their target audience is demographically. And so, for example, if Biola University is doing their marketing and they're thinking about their who's, they may even come up with kind of a stereotypical person like Biola Billy or Biola Bethany, and then they describe that person that, Biola Billy, he's, he comes from a Christian home, he's a junior in high school, he's exploring what his college options are, he's into music, he's into this, and you try to think and understand about who your audience is from a demographic standpoint and a psychographic standpoint. But what I want to challenge you all with today is to think in a little bit different way to segment your who's in what I think is an even better way than that. And to illustrate that, are you guys familiar with the 80-20 rule? Okay, in your organizations, you probably have 20% of the people who contribute 80% of whatever it is that you do. And I find this to be almost universal. Like in churches, 20% of the people do 80% of the work. In nonprofits, 20% of the donors give 20 or 80% of the money, or 20% of the volunteers do 80% of the work. And even in business, a lot of times it's 20% of the clients produce 80% of the revenue or the profit. So anybody seen that in their organizations where it's kind of an 80-20 rule? Okay. Well, what this reveals to us is that our who's, the people who are already connected with our organization, they're not all created equal. While we want more people numerically connected with our organization, what we really want more than anything is more of the 20%, right? We want those people who are the super volunteers and the super donors and the super clients who are really engaged with our organization. And so as you think about who are your clients or your members or your students, kind of segment that into at least two parts where you're thinking, okay, well, what are the 80% of the people like? What are their demographics? What are they thinking about? What communications platforms are they using? And then also think, what do we need to do then to move that 80% to the 20% that's more engaged? How can we communicate with them in those ways? And likewise, think about the 20%. What's different about them that makes them the 20% that are your super engaged people? Where are they? What platforms are they using? And what do they care about? And what you probably find is that it's not even just two groups of people, an 80% and a 20%, but then you've got your 20% probably breaks down even further, where maybe you've got a 5% of people or a 1% of people who are your super engaged people or your super fans, right? And the guys like this who are just, they're your super fans. This guy goes to every game, no matter what the weather is like, no matter what else is going on in his life. He travels to the games, as a visiting fan. He buys all your stuff, no matter what you put out, and he not only gives you his time and his money, but he gives you his heart. He even defines himself by in terms of your organization. And so we all want more super fans of our organization, right? More people who are just hardcore in it no matter what. And so we need to think of our who's in terms of how engaged they are and how we can move them towards greater levels of engagement. And one organization that does this extremely well is actually not too far from here. And I'm going to show you a sample of something that they've put out. Anybody recognize this right here? Yeah, what is it? You know who it's from?
It's based on the ministry philosophy of Saddleback Church.
Yes, it's part of Saddleback Church. And so this is how they segment their people at Saddleback. And they have the community, which is everybody, within 5-10 miles of Saddleback Church. Everybody who they're trying to reach in their community. Then you've got the crowd, who are the people who come occasionally on Sunday morning. They're loosely connected with the church. You've got the congregation, who are the faithful attenders and participants. You've got the committed people, who are the dedicated volunteers and very engaged. And then you've got the core, who are like the hardcore, we're in it all the way to the end, Saddleback people. No matter what happens, we're here with you. And so what they've done is they've defined their who's by levels of engagement, and they also have strategy in place in order to think about how do we move these people towards increasing levels of engagement. And so how do we connect with people in the community and get them to be part of the crowd? Then how do we get the people who are in the crowd and get them involved in our congregation and so forth in there, ultimately wanting people to be, helping to lead people towards being hardcore super fans. And I know that sounds a little bit superficial, but you want people who are fully devoted to your organization. And of course, in the context of the church, you want people who are fully devoted to Christ, totally sold out. And so that's what, this is how Saddleback does it in terms of helping people to move towards increasing levels of engagement. So I want you to think about that as you think about your who's, and also about why you communicate and what your goals are there. So as we move forward, I want to talk a bit about, now we get to talk a little bit about the tactical stuff, about the platforms and things like that. And one of the things that we find with all of these different social media things, our audiences are very fragmented. Nobody is using the same medium of communication. Nobody is, as popular as Facebook is, not everybody is on Facebook, right? Some people are Twitter fans, some people don't use Twitter. Some people are regular on email, but I find some people don't even check their email for a week or two or something like that. And the one staple of communication has always been mail, but I'll be honest with you, I check my mail once a month when the bills are due. And so if you send me a piece of mail some other time of the month, it might be 2 or 3 weeks before I see it. And so the challenge that we have is we've got this fragmented audience where not everybody is on the same, using the same communication mediums. And we have other challenges when it comes to communication as well. Some of the communications things that, well, let me back up for just a second. I'm going to talk about just some of the shortcomings of some of those. So let's talk about platform shortcomings, okay? Some of our platform shortcomings is that they're temporal, in that when you communicate the message, as soon as you communicate it, it's gone, right? So like with Twitter, you tweet something, and probably within an hour, that's gone, and nobody will probably see it after that. But some communications mediums are even more temporary than that. Like if you're in church and they give the verbal announcements, as soon as the announcements are done, they're done. Anybody who didn't hear them is not going to hear them at that time. And you find this with radio or TV. If once the message is out, it's gone. So there's this temporary nature of some of our communications platforms. Another thing is that some platforms are only accessible in certain locations. So again, if you lead a church, if people are not there on Sunday, they miss your verbal announcements that you give. If they're not there on Sunday, they don't get a Sunday program and get your announcements there, right? So some things are accessible in only certain places. Most platforms have a severe space limitation. So if you run an ad on radio, you have 30 seconds, right? And that's all the content that you get to put in it. If you're on Twitter, this is probably the most limiting communication medium, right? 140 characters, and that's it. That's all you get to put in there. But most communications medium are very limited in the amount of content you can put in them. And then another limiting factor in this, and whoops, not quite there yet. But one other thing, and actually Michael Hyatt touched on this a bit yesterday, is that you don't own most of those communication platforms. And especially when it comes, I mean, Facebook is the perfect example of this. I know a lot of people who were big on Facebook. Some people a few years ago even said, hey, you know what? We don't even need a website because Facebook is where all of our people are. So we're just going to build Facebook pages and we're going to skip a website. And then, you know, Facebook decides, hey, you know what? We're only going to show your updates to 10% of the people who are following you on Facebook, and all of a sudden you're hosed, right? Because you don't own the platform. And actually, one of the things that that we talk about and I've blogged about is this concept of digital sharecropping. And you know, back in the day, some people didn't own their land. They actually had to rent their land, and they were at the mercy of the landowner. And so if the landowner decided, hey, you know what, I don't want to rent land to you anymore, you were stuck and you had no place to go. And so that's the same situation that we find ourselves in with many of the social media platforms and other things where you don't own the space, you're at the mercy of the company that controls it. So one of the awesome things about websites is that it overcomes a lot of these shortcomings that other communication medium have. So your website, it's accessible all the time, right? You can, people can access it in the middle of the night, in the middle of the morning, whenever they want to. They don't have to be there when you're giving the message because the message is always there on the website. The next piece is it's accessible anywhere, or everywhere, I should say. You know, you don't have to be at the location where the website is because you can access it anywhere. The third awesome thing about a website is you've got unlimited space. And so all of these challenges that we have with other media like Twitter and everything else where you only have a short amount of space, you don't have that with a website. You can put anything you want, as much as you want. You know, if you're a pastor and you want to have 100 weeks of video sermons on your website, go for it. You can put it all there. There's no limit to what you can put on your website. And the next great thing, of course, is you're in control of your website. So you get to decide what it looks like, you get to decide what the navigation is like, you get to decide how it works, and everything that you put on it shows up all the time, which is great, right? And last but not least, or not last here, but you can also optimize it for search. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but search engines are a great source of new traffic, connecting with new people, but you can't really optimize a Facebook page or you can't optimize email for search, but you can do that with your website. And now, last but not least, it's linkable. And so one of the great features of your website is that you can post links in all of your other communication channels and point them to the content that you have on your website. So, but the one challenge that we do have with our website is that websites generally don't bring people back to them. And what I mean by that is think about your own organization's website, okay? When was the last time that you actually visited your own church's website or your own school's website or your own company's website? For most people, and I'll just ask, how many have accessed your own church, school, ministry, business website in the last day, just to check things, okay? All right, about half of you or so. But the thing that we have to think about from a website standpoint is your people are probably not every morning waking up saying, hey, I wonder what's new at my church. I wonder what's new at the ministry that I'm involved in, or I wonder what's new at the business, wonder what new specials they have. You know, some cases that happens, but it's very rare. And so the challenge that we have when it comes to our website is how do we get people to come back to our website? And that's one of the great that's one of the great attributes of many of the other communications media that we've already mentioned, social media and things like that. So the model that I advocate when it comes to communication strategy is this idea of using your website as the hub of all of your communication. So your website can be the central focal point of all of this, and everything else kind of revolves around it. And so think of this in the same way as Grand Central Station in New York. They actually have 67 different tracks that connect rail lines from all over the eastern United States. They all connect in this one place so that people can all come in from all of these different places and they can get what they want. Sometimes they just are passing through very quickly. Sometimes they stay for other reasons, but it's a connecting point for everything else. And so this is kind of the model, and actually this is it kind of builds on actually what Michael Hyatt was talking about yesterday when he talked about having your home base and then having your embassies. So your website, and actually I put here the blog as potentially a connecting point. It really depends on how you do your blog. Sometimes people have a blog on a third-party site on like WordPress.com or something like that, and so it is, in a sense, an embassy. But I actually advocate making it a part of your website, so it's a part of your communications hub, and you have control over the content and over the design and all that. So what I want to do next is just show you really practically how this can work in terms of moving your who's from increasing levels of engagement. So we talk about people who are unconnected from your organization, and they're over on the left. And I'm going to just use the term marketing in a general sense. I know some of you who may be involved in churches may not like the term marketing when it comes to church stuff, but let's just call it marketing or outreach or something like that. So basically what you're doing is you're thinking about your unconnected people, your unconnected who's. Who are you trying to reach? And you're thinking, how can we get in front of them? And so we want to rank well in search engines. We may do direct mail. We may do advertising. We may do social media. All of these things with the goal of driving those people to your website where they can learn more about you. But the important thing is we don't just want one-time visitors to our website, right? We want to turn first-time visitors into regular visitors. And so the goal, I think one of our highest priorities when it comes to our websites is we want to get people to subscribe the first time that they get there. And there's all different kinds of ways that people can subscribe. I do think that email lists are probably the best because you own your list, and as opposed to some other social media type things. But the thing is that we talked about how our audience is so fractured. Some people, everybody's using different communications methods, communications channels, and so the goal isn't to get all of your people using all of those channels. The idea is to get people to use the communications channels that they're already using, right? So if somebody is on Facebook every day, that's a person who you'd like to have like your Facebook page so that they hear from you on there. If somebody is using Twitter, you want them to follow you on Twitter, so if that's the best way, that the way that they want to get information from you. And so it really is meeting people where they are rather than trying to change people's communications habits and behaviors in order to hear from you. And so I would look at this as being an ideal way of trying to help people go from being unconnected to being connected. Oops, I got to back up here just a second. All right. So let's talk about what makes up a great website that serves as the hub of your communication, all right? First of all, you want it to make a great first impression. And by this, I really mean you don't have to wow people with your website, but you just need it to look decent and you need it to communicate who you are as an organization. You need to be able to communicate your brand. You need people to understand who you are right when they get there. They say, marketing people say you've got 3 seconds or something like that from the time that somebody gets to your website before they may potentially click off. And so it's important to make a good first impression and help people understand who you are. Next thing you want in a great website is intuitive navigation. You really want people just to be able to find what they're looking for quickly and easily on your site. And they should be able to do that without having to think about it. Next thing on there is responsive, and responsive is kind of a buzzword these days, but if you're not familiar with it, it really just means you want your website to be accessible using all types of devices. So you want them to be able to view your site and engage with it, whether they're on a laptop or whether they're on a tablet or whether they're on a phone. And to be honest, I'm not necessarily saying that your site has to be responsive in the terms of like it changes sizes based on the device, but you just need it to be accessible from all of those devices and all different browsers, and be thinking about that. Next element of a great website is it's got to be up to date, right? It's got to be current. And so if you are thinking about what platform are we going to use for our website, you want to make sure that you choose something that is easily updatable, not just by one tech person who everything has to go through. So I'm a big fan of content management systems and a big fan of WordPress, using WordPress for your website, because you can have your church secretary update it, you can have your personal assistant update it. I mean, anybody who can use a computer can update a WordPress site because it's very simple. And by doing that, you can also delegate the responsibility, so it's not just one person, but you can have 3 or 4 or 10 or however big your communications team is, people responsible for different areas of it. That way your website is always the go-to place for information about your organization. The next element of a great website is that it's sticky. And by that, I really mean 2 things. First of all, it should have good content on it that draws people in and makes people want to come back. I mean, it is a big challenge to get people to come back to your website, but having interesting content on there, especially if you're able to share stories about what your organization is doing, successes that you're having, how you're transforming lives, that's really key. And then just that, the other aspect of sticky is what we talked about in terms of getting people to subscribe to stuff so that they're regularly coming back. Another element of a great website is that it's a resource center. Anything that your organization hands out in a printout or something like that should be on your website. So if you're a school and you have permission slips, they should be on your website. If you have a handbook of some sort, it should be on your website. Anytime somebody comes to you and says, oh, I didn't get that document, or, I didn't get that, you should be able to say, well, it's on the website. You don't have to print out a copy for that person. It's there for them all the time. And as you become reliable as an organization putting everything on there, people will, instead of coming to you and saying, I don't have this, can you give me a copy? People will go to the website and look for it because they'll expect it to be there. And the last element, I had a tricky time coming up with a word to describe this, but I'm just going to call this gravity. And the analogy that I'll use, again, is just to go back to Grand Central. When it started, it was just a connecting point for rail lines, and people would come in on one train, they'd get off and get their connecting train. But as things changed, they began adding things. They began adding stores to it. They began adding restaurants to it. There's a museum at it now. And so now Grand Central is not just a connecting point, but it's a destination in and of itself. And so that can be true for your website as well. Maybe initially it's just a connecting point. It's just a place where people can get information about your organization. People can buy products if it's a company, something like that. But think about over time adding more and more functionality to it. So like if you're a church, you can add videos or audio of your sermons. You can add like if you're a school, you can have registration online, or even churches that have classes can have online registration. You can do room reservations if you've got a facility. Be thinking in terms of what else can we bring into the hub of our website. And as time goes on and as your website and your organization matures, it can become a destination unto itself. So those are 7 elements of a great website. And one other thing that I would add to that is just how significant this is. And with Grand Central Station, up to 1 million people a day actually pass through that station. So think about for a moment what would happen if they neglected it or didn't develop it. Think about what would happen if it looked and smelled like a dump. Or what would happen if there were no signs at the station telling people where to go from one train to find their connecting train? What would happen if the stairs and railings began to fall apart? What if some of the tracks broke down and trains couldn't get in or they couldn't get out? Well, it would be a real train wreck, right? And the same is true, and I guess the thing about it is that if your station is not good, then it doesn't matter how much time and money you invest in all the other pieces of it, everything else breaks down. So it doesn't matter how much they spend on the train engines or on the tracks. It doesn't matter how well paid their engineers are or well trained they are. If they can't get the train into the station and people can't connect with it, then the whole system breaks down. And that's true of your website as well. So if you may spend thousands of dollars on a billboard or on ad campaigns. You might spend all this time on social media or creating awesome videos. But if your website looks like a dump, it's difficult to navigate, if it's got broken links on it, then the whole thing breaks down, and all of that is kind of a waste. And so I guess the question is, when you think about your website as the hub for all of your communications, and really you're putting your entire mission and your whole organization is really based on this as the center of your communications. So my question is, that I ask people is, do you really want to have all of that hinge on a $5 website from these guys? Right? Probably not. So I guess my main point with that is just invest accordingly, because your website is critically important and it's very valuable to what you're doing as an organization. So let's talk now about what to connect to your website as a hub of communication. So we've got all of these different things. We've got email or e-newsletters. You've got the possibility of a blog, which I really strongly advocate. Social media is an option, mailing. So what should we connect to it? And my answer to that question is, I can't answer that for you. It depends on you and your communication strategy, as we were talking about before. This is where you've got to go in and you've got to understand your who's, understand who they are, where they are in terms of what communication channels they're using, and figure out what's going to work best for your organization, because the answer is different for every single organization. But the important point is that you don't need to run to the next greatest thing all the time. You don't need to be jumping on the bandwagon of whatever is popular at the moment, okay? Really think strategically about what communication channels you're going to engage in. So let me just speak for a couple minutes about how you decide that for your organization, okay? It's not too complicated, and I touched on the first one, but first ask yourself, how many people in your target audience are using a particular platform? And the best way to find out what this is, you know what it is? It's to ask. Yeah, survey your people. Find some way to do that. Get people to let you know how many of them would prefer to hear from you through email? How many would prefer to hear from you on Facebook, on Twitter, in the mail? And just find out where the numbers break down. And then the next thing that you've got to consider is, do you have the resources for it? And the first thing that we think of is money when it comes to that. And certainly there are financial implications to some communication channels. Obviously, if you're going to advertise on radio or TV, or you're going to do a billboard, there's money involved in that. Some people are using texting now, and there's like mass texting services, which I think are a great opportunity, but there's fees involved with that. So do you have the money for it is one question. The bigger question is, do you have the people and the time? And this is especially true when it comes to social media, is do you have the people and the time and your own personal time when it comes to all of the various communication channels and social media that are out there. And the next thing to ask yourself, or the next resource in there, is the tools. Do you have the tools to do it? So say, for example, you really like the idea of doing video. So do you have a good video camera to do it? Do you have the video editing software? I mean, fortunately, those things are not expensive today, and so usually it's easy to get the tools that you need, but you got to ask yourself if you have the tools for those things. And last but not least is the expertise to do them. And this is different from time, because you may have a lot of time, but if you don't know what you're doing, you probably won't be very successful. You can always learn how to use new mediums, new communications channel, but that takes time to learn and gain expertise on as well. All right, so I hope that helps you in terms of, one more thing. One more question to ask is, how effective is this? And this gets back to the to that piece of your communication strategy where it comes to measuring your metrics, and then also having a where in your communications. Where do we go from here? And so I think Facebook is a good example of this. We all say, hey, you got to be on Facebook because 70% of people are on Facebook. But the question is, when you use Facebook, is it actually helping you move people towards deeper levels of engagement? And you can only find that out by measuring it. And you may find that, hey, if only 10% of the people on Facebook are seeing our messages, it may actually not be working. But I can't say that for sure. You've got to measure and test to find out how effective each medium is for you. All right. Last piece of the puzzle here that I want to share with you. And that is 3 ninja tricks to supercharge your website, okay? And these are things that I think can really take a good website and make it a great website. And I could spend a whole session on each one of these things, but I will spare you that today. I will have more information, notes and things that you can go to afterwards. But these are 3 things that I'd strongly recommend you look into that can really help empower your website. First one is search engine optimization. And search engine optimization is the process of optimizing your site, both on the site itself and building links to it and other things so that it ranks better in search engines. So we at ourchurch.com, we look very carefully at our numbers, and our biggest source of new customers, new clients, new leads is from search engines. And so, and we find also the #1 way that people find churches today is through Google, right? And it's probably true for your organization as well. And you can't expect to just put a website up there and then have Google magically place it at the top of its search rankings. There's actually time and effort that goes into that. And so that's something that to look into, either for yourself or to hiring out somebody to optimize your site for search engines. Second thing that I'm a big advocate of is usability testing. And what usability testing is well, let me just back up a second. Usually as designers and as leaders, we have an idea of what we want to have on our website, what we think will connect with people, and oftentimes we just make assumptions about it. And so what usability testing is you just bring in a handful of people one at a time. You might bring in 3 people and just have them for an hour. Ask them to look at your website for the very first time, and just and while you do that, you have a set list of questions that you ask them, and you just observe. You ask them to speak out loud as they're going through. So you say, okay, this is your first time to our website here. What do you think this organization is about? What do you think we do? and then you can ask them to do certain things and say, like, okay, say this was your first time you were interested in going to our church. What would you look for on this site if you were interested in visiting our church? Or if you were interested in buying a new circular saw, what would you do? And then you just watch them as they go and they talk out loud and they say, well, I would look for this and I would try to get here. And you'll find that you may have some mistakes in there. You may have some things where you thought the language that you used was really clear, but it turns out it wasn't so clear to somebody who's an actual user. Or you thought your navigation was intuitive, but somebody had trouble finding something. And so this is very, very easy to do, very inexpensive to do. And so I advocate usability testing. Next thing on there that can really help is conversion optimization. And what I mean by this is, again, very subtle changes in your website can actually change people's actions. And by conversion, I'm using a little bit of marketing lingo there. Conversion is simply getting a visitor to your website to do what you would like them to do. And so if it's, you may want your visitors to become email subscribers. And so a conversion would be getting somebody to sign up for your email list. You may want somebody to buy your product. You may want somebody to donate. And so whatever your conversion is, that's your conversion. And so what you can do is you can actually try tweaking different aspects of your website and see how that impacts the performance, the conversion rate. And one of the cool things, I was actually reading Michael Hyatt's book on the flight out here, and he talks about how he tweaked some of his landing pages for some of the ebooks that he offered. He had just thrown them up as landing pages, and then he decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to try some different things. And he actually increased his conversion rate by almost 300% by just changing the way the page was organized, some of the language on it, and things like that. And what's cool is that Google actually has something called Webmaster Tools, and they will allow you to do what are called A/B tests. And so you can actually have two versions of your site that are simultaneously shown to different visitors, and then it will keep track of how many of those people convert on your site. So you may have a donate button on your site, and you may say, hey, you know what, we're going to make the button bigger, or we're going to change it from blue to green, or something like that. And you can actually run these A/B tests and then find out, you know what, hey, we got twice as many donations when we changed our button. And then you can make that change to your site. So I think conversion optimization is another worthwhile thing that it's a super ninja trick to really help your website to become that engine of growth that you want it to be. All right, so I'm going to leave you here with just a bit of a summary, okay? Some action steps for you that we've already talked about here. So 5 things I would recommend to you. First of all, develop a written communication strategy, which we already talked about. Look at those 6 questions. Second thing to take action with is just embrace this concept of making your website the hub of your communication and driving people to your website and then empowering them to further engage with you there. Engage people, excuse me, it's supposed to be engage your people where they are. Sorry for the typo there. But again, that's this idea that don't make people use the channels that you like best, but go to the channels where they already are and engage with them there. Measure, evaluate, and tweak. This is all a work in progress here. We talked about that being the 6th part, the where do we go part of your communication strategy. But things are always changing, and so we've got to always have a strategy that's going to be changing and evaluating our strategy to do that. And last but not least, be a ninja, okay? Try out some of those tricks that I just talked about. And with that, I think that you can have an awesome website that will really engage the people who you're trying to reach, grow your organization, and really help you achieve your mission online. So that is it for my presentation part of that. So thank you very much. Oh, I want to mention to you that I will have notes and links. They are not up at that address yet, but they will be momentarily. And they have links to further information on all of this stuff. And if you find this stuff as fascinating as I do, you can follow along as I write more about this on our blog, also at blog.ourchurch.com.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.